welcome everybody. We are here for Roundtable number 6. We are excited to be having this, and today we're going to be talking about loneliness and isolation. My name is Pastor Jordan, and this is Hannah, this is Kara, and this is Adam. And we're excited to be kicking this off. We know that isolation is a big problem. For a lot of people, loneliness is a big challenge, and it's not something that you just experience when you're sitting at home by yourself. It's something that is internal, I think, and so we want to talk about that today. We also realize that by the time this airs, it might be 5 or 6 weeks into a quarantine, so you might be struggling with this especially much. So, hey, why don't we just kick this off and tell me a little bit about maybe some experiences that you've had with loneliness, how it's affected you, how it's affected your relationships. I don't know. Talk. Let's do this.
I mean, I feel like it's inevitable, right? There's always a season, maybe a recurring season. It's not just, I think it's something everybody deals with at some point in their life. I feel like transitions and seasons bring that a lot. So like life phases. So even like interestingly enough for Jordan and I, when my Jordan, not this Jordan, when we got married, you would think that would be a time that you just feel like more together than ever and have a community. But for us, it like made us have to redo our community all over again because it just was like one of those life transitions of, oh man, we still have lots of single friends and we would invite them over, but all of a sudden they didn't want to come over as much. And so it was like, we got to figure this out again and do this together. And even in the midst of being together for the first time, it still brought in this season of like isolation and loneliness of what does that look like together, figuring out together. So I don't know, that's one of many times I've felt it.
Yeah, so how would you describe loneliness, Adam?
Talking about loneliness is hard because I think my bias in this conversation is that we would assume often that loneliness would happen from isolation from, I'm going to mix those words as we try to have this conversation. But you would think in loneliness of me being stuck at my house on my own and have no friends at the time, no social contact kind of thing. But I think instead loneliness is experienced a lot more in vulnerability. I want to pair loneliness with this idea of being fully known or not known, because I think there are seasons that I'll have lots of friends around me, but if I can't take the pastor hat off or if I can't be fully myself in the room that I'm in, that I can feel incredibly lonely on myself. Yeah, I don't know if that's helpful.
Could you give us maybe a specific example or a life phase where you felt that a lot?
So I think it's happened in rhythms for me because I went and did 3 years at college where you're starting your life over and your social group's over. And then I did it 3 years again during my master's in seminary. And then Abby and I just did it again a year ago as we moved here to King George. And so for me, it's coordinated with moves because you're redefining all of the groups that were with you at the time. Because it's funny, now I have my best friends that I was living with at Indiana Wesleyan, I have a group text with that goes off every maybe 3 weeks or something. And then there's a group text with friends from Princeton that we'll talk more often in that one. But then now I'm realizing that these two significant groups in my life now will not even know my daughter when she's born. Mm-hmm. And so like those relationships just look different now. Mm-hmm. And so, but each time that we made one of these moves, Abby and I, or just myself, have had to redefine what friendships look like. And you have to find out who you can be fully yourself with. And I think what can be so discouraging in relationships is that those are always resetting in ministry, it seems like, as people, especially in King George, they're getting restationed from Dahlgren. So as I connect with them and finally feel like I have a best friend that I can connect with, and they're like, oh, I have new orders, and I'm going to have to go somewhere else. And so I think it's just come in those kind of rhythms for me between moves or different situations that you can kind of ride the highs and lows of those friendships.
Yeah. So one of the things I want to dive in a little bit deeper on is you talk about this idea of not being fully known, right? And I don't know if, Hannah, could you speak to that a little bit? Maybe, there's been a time in your life where it's like, I have all these people around me, but I don't know that they necessarily understand who I am.
Yeah. Growing up, I was a missionary kid, so we moved plenty of times. And every year in school, the kids would cycle in and out because I went to a missionary school. So everyone was always going on furlough or moving back and forth or whatever. And so I think over time, I kind of isolated myself for a couple reasons. It was just too hard to keep saying goodbye to people. But the other thing was, I think loneliness comes from, I think, really just feeling unworthy to receive love from other people. And I would see other people having fun and other people making friends and doing that. And as an introvert, that didn't come natural to me. And so I think I often felt unworthy of participating in the fun or participating in making friends because I was scared to get hurt, or I was scared to be vulnerable, or I don't know, just scared to be myself.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you want to share anything about that? Or?
I mean, no, I can totally resonate with what you said. I think you hit on something really important, that like loneliness is often like a trigger of something that like, or can often be a trigger of something that's happened in your life, of like maybe like you were saying, you are surrounded by a bunch of people in this community, but something has happened in the midst of it that makes you feel like you don't really fit in, or like you are unworthy of it in some capacity or another. And I think it happens more than we like to admit in our social circles and stuff, and that we can be the perpetuators of it, or we can be on the receiving end of it. And I don't know, I think it's a good conversation to keep having, because it helps us be aware of how we're treating others, and also be aware of, you know, what Christ says about us when we are in the midst of those moments of feeling like we're lonely and isolated, even when we're surrounded by people.
Yeah, so you know, I know for me, like, you know, there have definitely been seasons in my life where it's been, you know, especially hard. It's like, man, I'm lonely here, right? You know, I'm struggling. One of those was college, right? And one of the things that I remember distinctly about college was we would have these school dances, right? And I would be in a crowd. They're really lame. Both of them, Hannah and Adam, went to the school I went to, Indiana Wesleyan, and they were really lame
and
dances,
I lived
right?
in Indiana, so I would go up for occasionally, so I know exactly what those are.
They're awful, right? Yeah. But you have like 400 people that all think they're having a great time, right? And I'm standing in the middle of this crowd. Everyone is like smiling and laughing and dancing, and I'm just like, I feel so lost, and I'm in the middle of a crowd of people having fun, right? Like, you know, if that's not loneliness, I don't know what is, right? And it's this, you know, yeah, sure, I'm surrounded by all sorts of people, but do they really know who I am? Do they even care, you know? And like Hannah was saying, you know, as an introvert, I'm like, man, do I even feel worthy of this? And I would just be like so overwhelmed by all the people. I would just go back to my dorm and sit in my dorm and be like, this is so much better, you know? Like, this is great. But, you know, I think that, you know, after going through a lot of experiences like that, it's very natural to become guarded and to just build walls up to self-protect. What have you guys learned or experienced with these guards that you've done to maybe take them down, or to remove them so that you can become known better by people, you know, to let them know who you are, for them to pour into you?
I think for me, overcoming like loneliness has a lot to do with like switching from like victim mentality to I'm actually going to do something about this. Because I think a lot of times we make ourselves feel alone. Like I experience this a lot with the middle school girls. I lead a middle school girls small group at Calvert, and some of the girls will come up to me after small group, after they've been laughing, having fun, hanging out together, being like, I don't have any friends. It's like, what was that though? Because we were all laughing and we were having fun, and you were being real with each other and sharing and reaching out. You know, I just saw 10 people hug you, and then you can so easily tell yourself, I don't have any friends. And I think for me, I've had to make an effort, especially through all the moves and transitions, to choose not to say, oh, like, poor me, no one is reaching out to me, no one is wanting to be my best friend. Like, well, what effort am I making in that?
Yeah, I've been challenged a lot in this, in the King George community specifically, because a lot of our families sleep in King George but live elsewhere, and I mean by that, they drive 2 hours to DC, they drive to Charles County for work or Fredericksburg, and then they come home to King George just to go to bed or stay home. And so one of the things that I knew I wanted to do from the get-go when we had moved there was start to create this kind of community where people will actually get to know each other more, have those relationships. And this is one of the smallest, silliest things, but I started on a whim a Northern Neck gaming group to do board games, video games, whatever. One, because I was like, okay, first off, I want friends outside of the church, because there is a weird dynamic of I have to be something to my people when I'm in the room with them as a pastor. I can be fully there in relationship and fully invested, but our relationship just has different boundaries to it because I'm a pastor. So I was like, how can I find some unchurched people in our community that I can play games with and do stupid stuff with just to get to know them? And that kind of a group on Friday nights, it was meeting at Starbucks at the time, and we'd get together like every other week, once a month or whatever, and it would just force me to go and hang out with some people, play some games. And even if there are nights that I'm like, man, why did I do this to myself? I just want to lay here. I don't want to do anything. But I think often a lot of our loneliness is self-made, where it's towing that line of boundaries of like, okay, I know this is something good for me to go out, to engage in community, to be around these people. But then there's this other piece of me that's like, I think I'd rather stay home on a Friday night. I just want to watch my shows. I finally don't want to have to do anything. And so I think trying to balance those two things has been really interesting, and knowing when I need to be around people and it's better for me to go and do that, or if I'm like, wait, I actually need to pump the brakes and take it slow.
Yeah, it's funny because you're saying that, and in my head I was like, I feel like there's always like both and, like my pendulum just swings from one side to the other, what I feel like I need to fix it. But I think a big one for me is FOMO. Like, it's real for me. And it's even worse with, like, my own family. Like, Jordan will take the kids somewhere, and I'm like, where are you going? What are you doing? Like, I'm taking them out because you clearly need a break. And I have 5 kids, so it's like, yeah, like, sometimes I need a break from that. But then as soon as he goes, I'm like, wait, I want to come too. And he's like, I think for everybody's health, you should stay back. And then I'm, like, punished for it. I'm like, oh, okay. But I think for me, simply unplugging in those times when I feel like I can feel it like making me almost like angsty in the way I'm treating others or in my thoughts and stuff, because I just feel like I'm missing out on things that maybe I wouldn't really feel that way if I weren't just like scrolling through my phone or just seeing things of other people that I care about gathering and stuff. And then when I'm able to unplug, I think it helps me settle into more of where do I actually land on this, like, and so then I kind of have to press into gratefulness, and I feel like that's like a place where I can surrender all that stuff and then lean into all the things that I am grateful for. And as like cheesy or whatever that may sound, it really has helped me, because when I start focusing on that stuff, it's really hard to be all caught up in what I feel like I'm missing out on.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's change gears here for a minute, and let's talk about social media, because you know, over the last 10-15 years, there's been a massive rise in social media. And on one side, you have people saying, hey, this is going to connect us like never before. And we have the ability to connect across great distances, right? With family members that we would have previously only been able to send a letter to or whatever, right? Like it's a huge technological advancement. But then you also have people that say, well, sure, we're all connected, but now friendship is so cheap. Or, it's, is it really true connection if all we're doing is having these relationships through our screens, right? And so let's talk about that for a minute. How do you think that social media has impacted relationships, and has it changed for the better, for the worse? What do you think?
It's a hard, heavy, deep topic.
Yeah, there it is. Boom.
I feel like social media can, I think it affects our self-esteem a lot, and then I think our self-esteem plays into our loneliness and how we feel about ourselves. And so I think if we are people that struggle with FOMO, or we struggle with feeling unworthy of receiving love, and we see other people, constantly together or constantly hanging out with other people or going on adventures, we can feel, I think, even more isolated in that. I don't know. I don't really consider myself a very social person. I'm really introverted. I like to hang out with me and my husband and just do our thing. I don't take a lot of pictures. But like a few months ago, just a random person like messaged me and was like, your life looks so fun and so like happy, and you look like you have so many friends and all this stuff. And I just thought that was so funny, because I never would have attached that description to myself. But if people are perceiving my life that way, I must be perceiving other people's lives that way. So I don't know. Interesting.
Adam, I know you have some thoughts on this because we've talked about it before, and I mean you don't think that it's the enemy of
Right. I was going back and forth about what to say on this, just because I think it's easy to pigeonhole this conversation onto social media and say that social media has caused this problem. And so I've had far too many conversations that go, well, the young kids just don't know how to talk anymore or how to have friends because of their screens or whatever. But I think that's more of an excuse than anything. Yeah. I keep going back to this book that talks about relearning the art of conversation in a digital age. And I think it does bring some good points to the table to talk about how we have lost some elements of vulnerability, of connection, of genuine time spent in the presence of somebody else. And I think that is true, because even when I'm sitting with my own wife and she is telling me about her day or what's going on with her pregnancy and things like that, I'm still the worst at pulling up my phone and saying, sorry, there's a work email. Sorry, I have to get after this. Sorry. And so I think it has caused some problems even when I'm sitting one-on-one in connection moments to be focused elsewhere in case I'm missing out on something else. But at the same time, I feel like social media has allowed me to keep tabs with and be able to be connected and supported by tons of other people, especially in a context. And I keep going back to this, and ministry is not a terrible job. It's a great job. It's an honor. But as a pastor, I think finding those people who are also doing ministry in other contexts that I can keep in touch with over time has been a huge support network that is made much easier with social media, as something for me that's helped me actually feel more connected and more in community in that role specifically.
So, I mean, I guess the solution isn't to abandon social media and ditch your phones and go back to a dumb phone or, not have one at all. So, I mean, I guess what would you say are healthy boundaries in that area? Like how do you balance using technology to leverage relationships and avoiding technology being a distraction from relationships? What do you think, Kara? I'm going to throw you on this one.
Okay, no pressure. I think it's self-awareness of your own personal boundaries. I don't think you can say this is the way it's done for every person. Each person has like their own limits, and I think when you start to realize, man, I'm in my head a lot right now. Like I'm perceiving things that probably aren't there, and it's affecting the way I'm looking at my own life. Then you probably need to put some boundaries up there and maybe shorten it. But also for me too, like you were saying, how it's kept you connected with friends, even if it's just in a group text or something. It's kept me connected with people from all different life phases, and I love getting to see glimpses into their life. I love being able to cheer them on, and so I think it's understanding just that self-awareness of balance, because and how you're using it too. If you even your motives of why you're posting something. Am I posting something because I'm trying to get a reaction from someone, and asking those questions, like, do I feel validated because I'm doing this and based on what I'm receiving back from people? And if those are your motives and stuff, I mean, then you just gotta have real conversations with yourself of, am I helping or not helping the situation?
Right.
And particularly with loneliness too.
Yeah.
Those questions that you're asking yourself are highlighting, am I posting this because I'm lonely, because I feel the need for attention, or because I genuinely want to update my friends, or whatever. But I think it does play a lot into that. The internal feelings of loneliness.
Yeah.
And the comparison stuff.
And it's not a social media conversation. It's about loneliness. But I keep going back to the amount of times that I will be in the midst of a long work week, grinding, and then I go on social media, and I swear, I always have at least one friend in Europe. that is on vacations. I always have one friend who's
true.
like on a beach somewhere, and I'm like, how are you paying student loans? What are you doing? But the reason I mentioned that is because it's easy for me then to, I think it goes back to gratefulness and thankfulness, because it's easy for me to allow social media to then say, wow, apparently they are doing life better than me. And then I lose any connection or thankfulness to the people around me, to the relationships that I have already. And that'll further isolate me. Like, I just need to ditch everything and apparently buy tickets and go travel and live another life. If I can figure out how to be an Instagram influencer and just get paid to take photos and travel, I'll take that gig.
Nice. Well, maybe we can start a NEWLIFE, influencer page and just run around as our model. It'd be great. All right, so at this point we've talked about kind of the internal feelings of loneliness and what that looks like inside, and I think a lot of people can empathize with that. And social media does play a role in this, and it can be positive, it can also be negative, right? But I think at the core of loneliness, the antidote to it is people, right? Like, God put people in our lives so that we wouldn't feel alone. Like, we go in Genesis, right? He's talking about Adam. He says it's not good for the man to be alone. He's all by himself. He has all these other animals around him, but he says I need to put somebody with him. Like there's beauty in relationship, right? And so for you guys, how have you maybe seen people be that antidote in your life? Have there been stories of that? And while you're thinking about it, I can share a story of mine, because y'all are chewing on it. But for me, at one point in the last year or so, I was just going through a pretty rough time, and I was like, I just listened to this book called People Fuel, and it was just saying, hey, you need people in your life, like God put them there for a reason, right? And so I started, I just felt really lonely after church one weekend, and was just like, man, like, I need to go hang out with people. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, people are the solution here. And this is going to sound really pitiful, but I was like, all right, I know I have friends, but I don't want to be a needy friend. I don't want to be the person that's like, hey, can I hang out with you, please? Like I don't want to be that, right? And no joke, this is the pitiful part. I walked around my house for 45 minutes with my thumb over someone's phone number, going, do I call them, right? Do I do this? And finally, I worked up enough courage to put my thumb down, right? And called them, and was able to just say, hey, look, man, like, I need to hang out, I need to spend some time with another human, and just talk, do something fun together, like whatever it is, like I just need people. And I thought that he was gonna be like, oh my gosh, like I'm so busy, I got all this stuff going on, like those are all the fears that run through your head. But he's like, no, man, I'm coming over. Brought some snacks, and we hung out, right? Yeah. And I think that there's there's beauty in having friends, but can you actually call them up when you need them, right? Yeah. Like, I think that for me, that's something that I've learned over the last year is, all right, I have friends and they care about me, and so I can lean on them when I'm going through tough times in the same way that I would be dependable if they were needing to lean on me, right? Yeah. So that was something that I learned over the last year. What about you guys?
The two things that I just heard in your story that I think I want to highlight for people at home was risk and initiative there. Yes. Because it took someone being willing to take the risk to reach out and then to initiate, to make that connection happen, but also to remember that the reciprocation is important, right? So the balance in relationships to not always be the one to initiate first to be able to do that, but to check on your friends and to spend time with them just communicates that you value them, is everything that I just heard in your story there that I think shares it well. So I wanted to highlight that for other people.
Yeah. I think we don't often give our friends enough credit. Because I've done that before, you're scrolling through, well, they have this, and they have this, and this person is doing this, and this person is married, or this person's hanging out with their friends, or this person is older, or this person is younger, and I can't reach out to someone that's younger because I'm supposed to be the leader, and this person is this, and this. Yeah. We can make an excuse for everyone, and I think
that's good.
I don't know, you've just got to hit a point where you just don't care so much about what people think about you. We all need people. Mm-hmm. We all sit there and we fret about who to call, who to not call. Just call people.
Yeah. It's good. Absolutely. Do you have anything to share on this? Or?
I feel like Hannah killed that.
Awesome. Any more conversations that y'all want to have around this topic? Any last words, wisdom, lessons
It
learned.
might be kind of repetitive, but on the initiative and risk taking, I think it's on both ends. Like, if you're in a season of loneliness, take initiative, take risks. And if you're not there, but you have an awareness that maybe a friend is there, take initiative, take risk. Like, I think it's hard sometimes to be the person asking when you're in that loneliness, but it's important to be that person. But then also on the other end, when you're not there, remember how hard it is when you're in those moments, and still take the time to just check in on a friend. We've got a lot of time to do it right now, so let's use some time.
Yep, leverage that social media, connect with people.
Yeah. And I just can't help but keep going back to what you had mentioned, Kara, about that season when you're first married with your spouse, because I think it highlights, especially in this time, that your spouse cannot be all of your social interaction. They cannot be everything that you need. You need relationships outside of just that as well. And I think in a time of quarantine, we're going to have to work harder to not just be insular in our houses, but then to be able to reach out and have those kind of connections in this time to kind of keep you alive as well. So.
I think cheesy pastor moment, but you know, no one is ever alone.
Yeah.
And like, God is with you, and I think loneliness can be caused by you believing a lot of lies about yourself that the devil can throw at you. So just be encouraged and you know, read your Bible, pray, do all the Christian things. But no, it's real. Like,
it matters.
God is never far. He's there for us to reach to. And he's blessed us with people. I love that you said, you know, we just have to be grateful for what we have. I think that's really the key to overcoming it, is just being grateful for what you have.
Absolutely. Cool. All right, well, let me close this out. Thanks so much for watching. We're glad that you tuned in for this. We know that a lot of people are struggling with loneliness, and maybe you're feeling it especially much during this time. And so we want to be here. We want to be a resource to you. We know that it's tough, and you can feel that inside. But you know, as we've heard today from our great panelists, you know, there's hope. There's you know, people. There's resources. There's, you know, God's put all of this in there. He's given you hope. He's given you confidence. He's given you the ability to reach out. And so maybe today, if that's something you're struggling with, just ask God, hey, you know, who have you put in my life that, you know, I can reach out to? Yeah, that happened to me even a few weeks ago, and a name popped in my mind immediately. And so, you know, I believe that God will speak to you in that. And yeah, we just want to be a resource to you. So all that being said, if you enjoyed this and it was valuable, go ahead and share it, like it, post it around, and hopefully we can help more people with this content. Thank you. Have a good one.
You always love